Part 18. He scolded her for training teenagers without his approval, to which she responded by questioning his authority over her. He told her to watch her temper, and it was safe to say she nearly lost it with him, her quick-tempered personality flaring. It's almost time for lunch. So Avery slams her laptop closed, wincing with regret as soon as she does, her compassionate side immediately regretting the harsh treatment of her device, adjusting her bun as she walks down the ornate staircase. She notes how quiet it is in the sprawling pack house, its eerie compared to usual. Her observant nature picks up on the unusual stillness. She had been locked in her room with her music blaring before her call, so the silence is startling, emphasizing her independent streak. Wandering to the grand dining hall, she finds it empty, so she walks towards the kitchen area where she keeps seeing people vanish into. Her curiosity piqued. "Hello." She nods to a lady who looks at her a little strangely, Avery's assertiveness evident in her greeting. Strolling into the bustling kitchen, she sticks to the wall, out of the way of everyone, her observant eyes taking in every detail. "Are you here to work or to watch, dear?" A man calls over to her, glancing over his shoulder while he shakes something into a pan. "Watch," she calls back, furrowing her brows as she observes everyone, her independent nature clear in her response. They all have a task, but none of them will look her in the eye. The kitchen staff's subservient behavior doesn't escape Avery as notice. Her eyes widen as she realizes that they must be untamed, her compassionate sigh feeling for their situation. She didn't expect the alpha of equality and peace to have such an outdated tradition, her disappointment evident in her expression. Untamed were the so-called runts of the pack. Most packs, including her own, had abolished the tradition of untamed long ago. It was fair, and it didn't let a pack work to its highest capability. Is anybody here between the ages of 12 and 18? She asks awkwardly, projecting her voice as loudly as possible, her assertiveness shining through despite the uncomfortable situation. One or two girls raise their hands hesitantly, and Avery nods, noting their fearful demeanor. "Did you hear about the training at the swamp EP3? She asks, and they shake their heads slowly, their movements seeming fearful. "Okay, well, now you have. It'll be training you all. Can you shift?" She asks quietly, walking over to them so their conversation is a little more private in the madness of the kitchen, her compassionate nature evident in her approach to the teenage girls. One of the girls nods and one of them shakes their head sadly, looking at the floor. "Okay, well, you can just help me monitor the speeds." She nods. "Tell anyone else you know. I want you all there. And your alpha knows." "You should have been told." Irritated and disgusted, her tone displays her anger, and, to her horror, the two girls shrink back slightly. "I'm not angry at you two," she says softly. "I just don't agree with the system your pack carries out." Seeing at the two girls are ready to pass out from fear, she gives them a nod. "I expect to see both of you there, and I will come to get you if you don't show up. You should all know how to defend yourself." She nods, keeping her voice quiet and gentle. Walking out of the kitchen, she sees Carol wandering up to the table with a notebook in her hand and a pen behind her ear. "You guys still have untamed," Avery calls to her, and Carol stops with a wince. "I was wondering how long it would take you to figure that out." She sighs, shaking her head. "I don't agree with it," Avery firmly states, and Carol nods. "I don't either. But we don't control the pack," she mutters to her, as the room starts to fill a little more as the mealtime bell is rung loudly. The two women sit in comfortable silence, both mulling over things privately. "So Alpha Roman is gonna help you train the kids. Sounds like a date," Carol says suddenly, wiggling her eyebrows as she turns to look at Avery. "Oh, you're worse than a teenage girl. You're worse than my brother," Avery gasps, swatting at Carolyn, whose smirk widens. "I've her date, she's fine. So that's okay." She winks, and Avery swats at her again. "Who's fine?" Ryan smirks, wrapping an arm around Carolyn's shoulders. kissing her temple. You, of course. Babe, she says innocently, snuggling into him. Avery smiles at the cute display before her attention is pulled to the hulking entrance of Alpha Roman. He takes his seat, and the meal is served quickly. Avery deciding to have a bowl of pasta. Lunch ends faster than she would like, and suddenly it's almost half two. A knock on her door rouses her from her quick nap. Opening the door, she makes eye contact with Roman, who looks a little impatient. I've been here for 5 minutes. He grumbles, and she raises an eyebrow. I was asleep. My world doesn't revolve around your location. She responds snark-ily, closing the door in his face. What the hell? We have to go. He yells, and she rolls her eyes. I have to change. I'm not wearing jeans to training. She hollers back, her scowl becoming more pronounced, as she hops into a pair of training shorts. I could have watched. He mutters, and her sharp ears pick up on this comment, but she tries to contain her irritation. Come on. It's a long walk. He adds loudly, and she lets out an exasperated screech, quickly throwing on a sports bra and grabbing the closest tootie. She storms out of her room, shoving by him. You're planning on parading like that in front of teenage boys? He asks with a raised eyebrow, and she unleashes her most vicious glare on him. Yes. If they can't contain themselves, then it's a feeble reflection on your pack. She responds with a withering death look shot in his direction. They get outside, and Avery can feel the sun on her skin. But as they enter the forest, she gets a lot colder. She hears a chuckle from behind her. You look good in my clothes. Roman smirks, and Avery freezes in horror, looking down at the black item of clothing covering her upper half. Shit, she whispers, walking behind him. His pack's teenagers were going to be able to smell their alpha off her. And then there would be pack-wide rumors. Shit, she repeats, and he shrugs. He'll shut them up if they say anything, he says casually, and Avery lets out a slow hiss of air through her teeth. Part 19. The pair arrive just as a group of teenagers laughing and pushing each other do. Avery looks at them with mild disdain, while Roman nods at them. Avery continually scans the faces of everyone who arrives, keeping an eye out for the 2 girls she spoke to in the kitchen. It ticks slowly closer to 3, and there's still no sign of them arriving, and she furrows her brows in concern and slight irritation. Who are you looking for? Bending down to speak into her ear. Slight shivers run down Avery's back, and she forces herself to swallow her spit. 2 of your own, Geza. She responds with a bite to her words, stepping away from him, not being unaware of the curious stares and the watching eyes of the teenagers. Oh, he mutters, looking uncomfortable as soon as she mentions own Geza. Avery clears her throat as it hits 3, standing up in front of the group. Okay. I want you all to get into a line, she shouts before she sees 2 small figures hurrying through the trees, looking very overwhelmed as they slide into the edges of the group. Avery makes eye contact with them and smiles. Actually, 2 lines, and I want anybody who can't shift to come up here to me, she announces, stepping back and stumbling a little bit over Roman's foot. His arms shoot out and steady her, holding her for a few seconds more than what would be needed. She wiggles out of his grip, her anger beginning to rise. She doesn't want him manhandling her or demeaning her authority in front of the kids just raining. A small group of wolves come up to her, the majority female, but 3 males being present among the 10. The group she's working with has doubled since the day before. She notes curiously. Okay. We're gonna split into 2 groups. Has shifted, and has never shifted, she says quietly to the 10 in front of her, and they split into 5 and 5. I'm gonna get those of you who have shifted to go ahead and go to the middle of the main trail. They're going to be running laps, and they're more likely to take a shortcut at the middle of their rounds. I need you guys to be there to stop people doing that, she instructs, and the 5 in that group quickly leave. She turns to the 5 remaining, who looked terrified. Both of her own gazes stand in front of her, one shaking like a leaf. Okay, I'm going to keep you 2 with me. She indicates to the two girls, and then looks at the other three. Go to the end. When your alpha links you that it's the last round, you write down or send us the names of the wolves through first. Okay? She nods, and those three scamper off. Avery turns to face the enormous group of youth who are standing in for lines instead of two. Not what she said, but whatever works. Works, she supposed. Today, you're e-shifting and running laps of this area. The whole area. Your alpha will mind link you the plan. Avery screams so that everyone can hear her. Carol showed her a map of the area earlier, and she had decided she would get them to go along the outskirts of the marshland. That way, if they cheated by trying to take a shortcut, they'd know, because they'd have to go help and get them out. She can hear some gasps and groans, and some of the teenagers look remarkably white in the face. What? Do you think that you shouldn't have to work on your endurance? It'll help you in fights and shifts. It'll strengthen your wolf and your human sides, and help them work in harmony together. She booms, and she can feel Roman getting closer to her. No mind linking. Roman says sharply, and the frighter rows straighten up, looking guilty. What were they saying? Avery asks curiously, and Roman scowls. I'm not going to tell you, because I don't think you should hear the words they used. He responds grimly, staring one teenager into the ground. 10 laps, and then we'll be doing sparring. Whoever is the fastest will be given a prize. Avery announces, before blowing a whistle. Shift, she commands, letting loose some of her dominance. Some of the teenagers closest to her wince and kneel in front of her. The two gaze behind her are on their knee instantly, looking ready to pass out. Pale faces and sweaty brows visible to everyone. Slowly, the teenagers begin stripping out of their clothes and then shifting, some shifting directly into their wolves from their clothes. Avery taps her foot impatiently, waiting until they're all in wolf form and facing the right direction. She nods to Roman, who takes it as his signal to puff out his chest, tilt his chin to the sky, and roar, begin, in his alpha tone. It looks like some of the wolves' legs started before their bodies did, as some end up in a heap on the ground, looking thoroughly confused with what happened. They gradually clamber up, before sprinting off into the trees. Roman lets out a soft chuckle, shaking his head. Well, they're enthusiastic about their run, but they also want to know what their prize is. He smirks, turning to face Avery, who is staring at her too Omgaza. Tell them it's a surprise, she says irritably, walking over to her girls. Come on. We can't get anything done sitting down, she whispers to them, and the two frightened girls slowly rise to their feet, looking as though there be anywhere else than here at the moment. Some of the wolves on their second lap sprint by them, and Avery raises her brows slightly at their quick return, glancing at Roman, who looks unusually concentrated. His eyes flash black and a scowl descends onto his face. What's wrong? She asks quickly, and the two girls look up nervously. Someone got stuck, he grimly states. Part 20. Whereabouts did they get stuck? Avery asks, pulling the map out of her bag. Roman stabs at a point on it which is a reasonable distance away from them, and she sighs. It'll be faster to go in wolf form, won't it? She asks softly, glancing at the two girls behind her who are sitting silently and watching the two speak. Much faster, he responds quietly. We need to get going. The others cowed and get him out. With an agitated sigh, Avery walks behind a tree and shifts into her black wolf after stripping off quickly. She emerges and hears Roman telling the two girls to wait there for them before he takes off behind a tree and appears seconds later as his bright white wolf. How are we doing this? Roman barks and Avery rolls her brow. Quickly, she responds, picking up her clothes bag in her mouth and taking off in the direction of where the teenager is stuck. The two run in relative silence, both speedy and agile. Sonia is silent, and she isn't trying to attack Roman's wolf, which is unusual for her. She's normally quite aggressive and will attack if provoked. Roman keeps running closer to her and guiding her away from the edges of the swamp, which she finds weird. It is his territory. Though, which, though. So it makes sense that HED know exactly where to avoid. But it's still strange. Every time he does it, he presses his entire side against hers, forcing her away from some corners. Soon enough, they spot a medium-sized group of teenagers all standing around the edge of the swamp, which looks a bit like a disgusting lake in that area. Bounding to behind separate trees, the two shift and change quickly, Avery emerging a second later than Roman. "Where's my hoodie?" he asks in a low voice as they walk towards the teenagers, and she gives him a confused look. "I could only carry so much." She shrugs, walking to the edge of the swamp. She peers over the edge, and Roman quickly wraps an arm around her waist and yanks her back about 3 feet. "It's very unstable here. If you get too close, you could fall in," he mutters, releasing her as the teenagers eye them curiously. "Who's in there?" Roman asks coldly, looking around at the group surrounding them. "Henry," one girl whimpers, tears staining her cheeks as just supported by 2 of her friends. "Mate," Avery asks quickly, and the girl nods, dissolving into more tears. "How long has he been stuck?" Roman asks one of the males near him, and the guy shrugs. "Maybe 10 minutes. We tried to get him out, but he seemed to get more stuck," he quickly reports, looking distressed. Avery spots the boy about 10 feet out, his form shifting between being human and being a wolf. "Stop switching," Avery roars to him, eyeing the surface of the swamp carefully. "I think I can get out there," she announces, and Roman unleashes a growl, shaking his head. "Trust me, you can't," he snarls, looking around. "Did anybody link the rescue?" Roman asks the group, and one girl nods. "They said they'd be here soon." Almost as soon as she says it, a group of men hurry up to them, holding a round of rope and bags of equipment. "Henry," his mate shrieks, lunging forward as the boy's head goes underneath the surface, trying to shake off her friends holding her back. They don't let go, pulling her back even further, all while apologizing to her over and over again. Roman links the search time with the information, and they quickly hurry to the edge, putting down some planks of wood. Avery raises a brow but watches them as they almost instantly build a small dock-like feature. "Henry, cattle," one of them shouts, and the boy bobs to the surface, looking terrified out of his mind. Avery bites her lip, unconsciously grabbing Roman's arm and squeezing as she watches with bated breath. One of the men stands on the dock, a rope wrapped around his waist and a cord in his hands. He throws the rope in his hands to the boy, as the men on land hold on to the one around his waist, just in case they need to pull him in suddenly. This will be a startling anecdote to advise against cheating, Avery mutters to herself, digging her nails into Roman's forearm as the boy flails in the muck. The boy catches the rope and hangs onto it for dear life, his hands turning white at the strength she is exerting to hold on. Slowly, he is pulled in towards the dock, losing his grip some of the time and causing hearted acts to happen across the crowd of onlookers. He's dragged up onto the makeshift dock, and he lays there for a minute, his mate still being held back from going near him. "Wait till HES on solid land," Roman commands the girl, watching with a hint of nervousness. "When is the Pactor arriving?" he asks sharply, and one of the men shouts, "Any time now," in his direction. The boy is gradually moved onto the ground, and his mate is released by her friends, throwing herself on top of the boy and squeezing him tightly. "He won't need his lungs cleared by the doctor. Chef's doing it for them," one of the girls giggles, as Henry rolls on his side and spits out moss. Avery wrinkles her nose in disgust, stepping back a few feet. "Why did you end up in the marsh?" Avery asks sternly, and the boy slowly raises his eyes to hers. "I was trying to take a shortcut," he says quietly, and she grits her teeth. "This is what happens when you try to take a shortcut. Everybody, look at this, and remember it." Avery barks, "You disobeyed orders." Henry looks terrified for a moment, and his mate looks equally scared. "There won't be any punishment this time," I think the near-death experience was punishment enough. To be honest, Avery snarls, shaking her head. She suddenly realizes she still has her nails dug into Roman's arm, and quickly releases him, stepping away as though he had burnt her. Sorry, she mutters, and he just glances at her, looking back at Henry. Take the day off tomorrow and recover. If I ever catch word of you, or any one of you, doing something this stupid again, there will be serious consequences. The marsh is off limits for a reason. Roman booms, and birds can be heard squawking and flying off. There is silence as all of the teenagers nod. The present adults look annoyed, and Avery doesn't blame them. They were pulled away from something else that could have been equally important, to help somebody who purposely ran into the marshes. Roman turns on his heel to walk back to where they had left the Tuongeza, and Avery follows after him, rubbing her arms as a shiver runs through her. Bet you wish you had brought my hoodie now. He smirks, walking 2 steps ahead of her, but still being able to hear her teeth chatter every so often. Fuck off. I wish I had brought duct tape for your mouth, she grits out, clenching her teeth to stop them chattering. Well, would you look at that? He gasps in fake astonishment. You didn't say you didn't want me here. I would have been fine handling that on my own. She responds irritably. You would have gotten in, and gotten yourself stuck. Besides, you clawing my arm didn't say that. He states nonchalantly, and Avery's eyes widen. Would have been better if it was my back. Though, which, though? He smirks, glancing over his shoulder to see her bright red face. Part 21. A slightly uncomfortable silence follows his comment. Our life has never been as uncomfortable as it has been since we came here. Sonia comments irritably, scowling. Shut up, drama queen, is Avery's response, as she scowls as well. Are you gonna have them train after that? Roman asks quietly, rubbing the back of his neck. The back of his neck and his cheeks are slightly red, which makes Avery smirk. Was he embarrassed? Or did she make him nervous? I don't think so. When they get back from this round, I think I might just sit them down and talk to them about ethics or their futures or something. She mutters back, rubbing her temples gently. She couldn't wait to get back to her room and have a bath, and she felt that longing with every fiber of her being. Yeah, you could talk to them about your position and how you got it. Roman chirps up, and Avery shoots him a look. Most alphas don't know that information, so I'm not going to tell your teenagers. She responds with a slightly cold tone to her voice. Roman goes quiet, and he looks slightly regretful. Avery catches up to him, walking alongside him and matching her strides with his. How are you liking it here? He asks awkwardly. It's too hot and too bright, and I haven't gotten to go to the beach yet because I have so much to do. She sighs, her words revealing her frustration. Well, tomorrow is our pack's day of rest. Why don't you take the day off, too, and we can go to the beach together? He suggests, and she eyes him silently, like a date. Sonia asks enthusiastically, practically scratching at the insides of her mental prison. He has a mate. Avery reprimands, trying to figure out what to respond with. Shess dead. Sonia shoots back excitedly, and Avery is slightly appalled at her wolf's attitude. Avery realizes Roman is staring at her, waiting for a response, and she blinks a few times, staring at him vacantly. Yeah, that should be good. I got nearly everything I needed to do done today anyway. She finally says back, nodding her head as she speaks as if trying to reassure herself. As if that's exactly what she's doing. She doesn't really do dates because she doesn't feel like she deserves to take the surrogate place of somebody mate. And it doesn't help that she has no idea if this is a date or a show, and tell by the alpha of the pack that she's visiting. You make everything so complicated. Sonia sighs, shaking her head. And I suppose you would just screw him and hope for the best. Avery scowls, clenching her jaw. It is every other time we tried it, Sonia retorts smugly, and Avery can almost picture the expression on the wolf's face. They arrive back to the area where the 2 girls are, and they lean against separate trees. So will I meet you there? Do you know how to get to the beach? He asks suddenly, and Avery shoots Roman a glare without turning her head entirely. He'll get Carol in to show me, she mutters, and Sonia throws herself down in a huff. But we won't get any saucy make-out sessions in the corners of the house then. Sonia whines, and her grumpiness is so pronounced that a whimper escapes Avery's mouth, causing her to clap her hand over the bottom half of her face and stare ahead of her like it didn't happen. The three other people present all stare at her in confusion and mild shock, but the sound of footsteps quickly deters them. Exactly. You pig-headed bitch. Avery responds, gritting her teeth and then blowing her whistle to signal the wolves to stop where they are. The group of wolves that arrived stumble to a halt, freezing in place once they stop. Wolf-headed, Sonia corrects smugly, and Avery forms a mental block between her and her wolf so that she can't hear her anymore. Shift back. We aren't running any further today, Avery shouts, and the wolves scamper off in different directions, their tails between their legs at her high-pitched tone. Slowly, the amount of adolescent wolves increases, and as they shift and dress, they sit in rows in front of their alpha and Avery. You guys can sit down now, Avery murmurs to the two Omega girls, who join the outskirts of the crowd silently. What do they do if they have no clothes? One girl suddenly asks from the crowd, and Avery rolls her eyes. They go look for some. They have 5 minutes. She scowls, slipping back into Roman's hoodie. We're going to be talking to you about the future, Avery announces. I want every single teenager that was here linked in with somebody so they know what's going on. I'm doing this once, and then you guys can ask questions at the end. There's a ripple of excitement that runs through the crowd, and everybody seems to sit up a little straighter. First, I'd like for us to run through some ground rules for not only these sessions, but also for your future roles, whatever they may be. Avery begins, noting the arrival of a few more wolves, who quickly shift and join the group. I don't want anybody talking when I'm talking. If you aren't going to pay attention, don't come. It's as simple as that. These sessions are not mandatory, and I don't particularly care if you show up. I'm as happy to teach 5 of you as 50 of you, so show some respect. Avery snarls, seeing a boy pale. I was targeting anyone with that little speech, but now I know who to target. She smirks, cracking her knuckles. As Deputy Alpha Will Kotiti said, these sessions are not mandatory. If you don't want to come, you don't have to. But you should. This is a rare chance to see how another pack train and Rapid Rock is particularly well-versed in fighting and tracking. If you don't show respect to Deputy Alpha Will Kotiti, however, you won't be allowed to attend, Roman announces, his face looking like it was carved out of stone. We don't believe in cheating. Today, one of your fellow teenagers, Henry, got stuck in the swamp and could have died because he tried to take a shortcut. This is not to be mocked, we are using him as an example. A lot of you would have done the same thing. I want this to be a lesson for all of you. He could have drowned before we got to him, and he would have lost his wolf, Avery states, and there's a ripple throughout the crowd. A lot of the crowd looks appalled at the revelation, and there's a low buzz of chatter, which Avery expects and allows for. It isn't every day that somebody nearly dies, and if it is, they aren't used as an example very much. It's usually considered rather rude. But it doesn't give a crap. Part 22. The best trackers are people who can move quietly and use their senses for a long period of time without tiring. Endurance is key for this profession, as is patience. Avery nods, and Roman nods with her. Trackers are essential. They're often seen as softer than the warriors, and they are, but they have to be able to fight. They can fight for longer than most warriors can, which is a huge advantage to them when they're hunting someone. Roman continues, looking to Avery to continue. A rogue expects brute force and doesn't expect weapons from trackers. We equip ours with handguns easy to use, and easy to hide. I don't know what you guys here do. Avery glances at Roman, and he holds eye contact with her for a moment. We usually carry knives, and a lot of them at that. Handguns is a good idea, but the noise can attract more unwanted attention. A bigger reach is a bigger advantage. Avery responds quickly, and there's a pregnant pause before anyone speaks. Warriors are the strongest. They don't have to be the biggest, but they have to be the sharpest in battle. It takes more than big muscles to win a fight. Roman moves on, and a girl giggles. Yeah, Marcus learned that yesterday. She grins, and the crowd snickers. Yes, he did. I hope you all learned to never underestimate the person across from you. You never know what tricks they have. Avery smiles, nodding to the girl in the crowd in appreciation. Any questions? Avery asks. Her eyes rover the crowd. How many years does it take to train as a warrior? One boy asks, and Avery looks to Roman for his answer. It varies from pack to pack. Here, generally 3 years. In those 3 years, you may take part in pack exchanges or diplomatic missions. He rumbles, and some people in the crowd perk up. How about trackers? For your pack, Alpha Wilco TT. One girl chirps up, leaning forward to hear the answer. Avery doesn't correct the girl on using the wrong title. Instead, she takes a minute to think. We say for 5 years, which is almost double most of the pack's times. We believe it takes time to perfect your craft, and you can't rush perfection. She winks, and she gets some laughs from some of the teenage girls. What if you don't want to be a warrior or a tracker? One boy asks, looking a little disgruntled. There are administrative roles that need to be filled everywhere. We have a lot of jacks of all trades, master of none, in a lot of commanding roles. So don't worry if you don't hear about anything that suits you perfectly. Roman nods. Exactly. As your Alpha said, you don't have to fit one of the roles we spoke about today. You might decide to go to university in the human world, as I did, before pursuing any pack role. She declares, and that raises some eyebrows. What did you study? A girl asks eagerly, and all of the crowd is now intently listening. Economics, politics, and law. Avery shrugs, and Roman raises his eyebrows a little. Why are you not an Alpha? One boy asks curiously, and Avery clenches her jaw. Because I'm not. Next question. Avery responds in a slightly snappy tone, and Roman leans his back against a tree near him. How did you become a deputy Alpha? One girl asks, furrowing her brows. Training. Avery replies shortly, gazing around the clearing, red crawling up her neck slowly. Maybe it would be better just to tell them. So they stop asking questions and poking around. Sonius adjusts quietly, and Avery realizes she dropped her mental block while she was answering questions. They put you down. So no, never witch. So no. Avery responds, a scowl forming on her face. What's your favorite type of training? Someone fills the silence, and Avery shrugs, looking to Roman. I like running. I like building my endurance. He coughs. I like sparring. Avery sighs, leaning against a tree nearby Roman's. Are you and our Alpha dating? A girl near the front smirks and everyone else releases chuckles. No, both adults say in unison. And every teenager's eyes suddenly flash black for a moment, as do Alpha Romans. Moments later, everyone is back to normal, but they all look more serious and somber. Sorry? Deputy Alpha Wilco TT. They quickly say in unison, and Avery furrows her brows. And they all gradually leave, much to Avery's surprise and extreme confusion. Okay, goodbye, Avery mutters, giving a sarcastic wave to the turnbacks of the children. They have to go do their homework. Roman shrugs casually, while Avery picks up her stuff with a bit of a slump to her shoulders. Avery sighs, walking after the teenagers with her bag slung over her shoulder. Good working with you today. We could go on a run. Roman calls after her and Avery crunches up her nose. Nah, I don't think so. I think I'm just gonna go back to the house, shower, and relax for a little bit before dinner. Thanks for offering. Though I'll wait though. Maybe tomorrow, she suggests, making her strides longer and quicker. Roman catches up with her with relative ease, strolling beside her and looking down at her. Is there something wrong with me? He asks curiously, and she grits her teeth. Me not wanting to go on a run with you has nothing to do with you. I want to have a shower and a nap. She responds rather coldly, feeling rather taken aback by her own tone after she says the words. Well, why didn't you kiss me back last night then? He pouts, a grumpy expression taking over his face. Avery almost laughs, until she realizes HE's being serious. He wants to know. God, I didn't know it was such a bruise to your ego. She snorts, switching the arm her bag is on. It is. So why won't you kiss me back? He pesters, and he continues asking this question for 5 minutes. Every passing minute brings Avery's temper up by a couple of points, and when they get near the edge of the forest, Avery loses it and pins him against a tree. You have a mate. She roars, her voice echoing throughout the empty forest. Roman lets her pin him, surprise crossing his face. She's dead. He responds, but it almost sounds like a question. No, she isn't. We would have heard. She spits in his direction, dropping him from her hold in disgust. Not if I didn't want you to. He whispers, and suddenly, she's being pinned against the nearest tree. A shriek of surprise escapes her lips, and she flounders in the air trying to get down from where he has her elevated to. Eye of contacts. She snarls, and he smirks. Not good ones. It would seem, he murmurs, getting closer to her face. Let him. Just give in. Sonia yips, practically singing. Avery gasps as Roman pulls her closer to him, or, rather, he gets closer to the tree, effectively sandwiching her between the bark and his body. Do it, Sonia hollers. Let him do whatever he wants. Avery looks at Roman through half-closed eyes, looking up through her eyelashes. He unleashes a growl and presses his lips to hers. She doesn't move for a second, but she quickly returns the kiss this time, putting a hand on the back of his head and the other around his shoulders. Her legs automatically wrap around his waist to try to stop herself sliding down, and he relocates one of his hands to her ass, squeezing roughly. She lets out a squeak of surprise, and he takes that opportunity to slip his tongue into her mouth. Sonia is cackling away in Avery's head, and she has to stop herself from gritting her teeth. It probably would have meant she bit off part of Roman's tongue, and she really doesn't need that sort of situation to deal with today. She quickly zones back into the kiss, moving her lips with his. They make out for a few minutes, and then he pulls his lips away from hers, beginning to kiss down her neck, a devilish expression on his face. What the fuck am I doing? Avery panics, and Sonia perks up, paying attention as Roman slowly pulls off his hoodie from her body. I've got this, Sonia replies confidently, as Roman sucks gently on part of her neck. Exactly 5 seconds later, Roman has his lips against something furry, causing him to open his eyes. He makes eye contact with a wolf, who smirks, before quickly jumping down and scampering off into the trees. Part 23. What the fuck? Avery groans, Sonia taking full control and scampering through the trees. Don't blame me you didn't fight him off either, Sonia responds in a snooty tone, flicking her tail as she slows her run to a slow walk, sailing through the trees with ease. I wouldn't have let it go much further. Avery cries out in indignation, and Sonia rolls her eyes. Oh yes, you would have. You were just afraid of the consequences that you'd have to deal with after. Her wolf bites back before the two simultaneously put up mental blocks and go about their own business. Avery makes sure that she knows where they are, while Sonia sniffs at everything, enjoying her time shifted. She doesn't like being cooped up, and Avery admittedly feels guilty for keeping her locked up for almost 2 days. Her run earlier helped a little to release some tension. Still, she decides it's probably best to allow Sonia to run free for an hour or two, just playing and wandering around her new surroundings, figuring out her new favorite spots and figuring out where to avoid. Well, "Don't go near the swamp," Avery mutters, and Sonia releases a harumph noise, ignoring her as she sprints around the circumference of the swampland. Going further into Lancaster territory, Avery finds a clear lake and glances around, silently padding into the lake. She shifts back into her human form, gazing over the surroundings of the lake. Walking further into the lake, the water is now just below her shoulders, and she squints at the trees surrounding the water suspiciously, convinced that somebody is watching her. She's paranoid, but shed like privacy, which is a bit of a weird ask when she's the one who is naked in a very public lake. Laying on her back, Avery releases her bun, letting her body sink a bit so that the water covers her entirely. Her hair soaks up some of the water, becoming remarkably more cumbersome as she begins to get herself upright, treading water the entire time. Another nervous look around, and something catches her eye this time. She can see something sparkly at the bottom of the lake, and Avery quickly weighs the pros and cons of the situation. Positives: she could get some new jewelry out of this, all while working out some of her nervous energy. Negatives: she could drown, but that could get her a day or two off from work, so she wasn't fussed about it. With that thought, she took in a large breath, before directing herself straight down to the object, quickly and powerfully paddling to the bottom. She swipes the object up and misses. "Fuck," she shouts underwater, quickly resurfacing and getting another breath. Giving herself a minute to breathe, she then swims back down, this time successfully grabbing the object and holding on to it tightly as she hurries to the top of the water. She isn't a big fan of swimming, but she is a free things, so shall lose some to win some. Wiping the water out of her eyes and pushing her tangled mane behind her ears, she squints at the object, examining the metal and jewels closely. She realizes after a minute that it's a ring on a necklace, a thin golden chain and a beautiful ring with emerald and amethyst-colored stones adorning a plain band. Staring at it curiously, she surveys the area around her, squinting for anything else in the water. Putting her head under the water, she opens her eyes and looks in every direction, but nothing catches her eye. With a slight frown, she resurfaces again. She cuts her foot on a rock as she steps up the natural steps of the lake, cursing quietly to herself so as not to attract any unwanted attention. She still isn't entirely sure that she's alone here, and so she shifts once her wolf will be able to paddle. Picking up the necklace from one of the steps she left it on, she holds it carefully in her mouth, before taking off at running speed again. Heading back to the pack house in the most direct route she can identify, Sonia is just as curious about the necklace, but she feels odd about having it. And so, she hides it in her mouth, being careful not to bite down on it or swallow it. Avery appreciates the effort, and as she comes up to the pack house, the main door is open, so she runs right in, her paws pounding against the wooden flooring. Some ladies shriek as they see her bounding towards them, only for her to skid a little bit and veer up the stairs with a wolfish grin, the gold and metal of the necklace gleaming between her teeth. "No wolves in the house," a lady shouts after her, her face a picture of outrage. Avery bounces up the stairs, her tail hitting everything around her, including a wolf cub who looks extremely startled until a wolf passes him by. Avery makes it to her room and forces the door open with her paws, discovering a pile of clothes outside it that she'll deal with later. Sniffing her room as she walks in, she can only identify her own scent, so she releases a sigh of relief, dropping the necklace on the side of her bed that's furthest from the door, and shifting, hurrying over to lock her bedroom door. She catches a glimpse of herself in the mirror and winces a little, dirt covering half of her body, and her hair full of seaweed. She didn't even notice any in the water, but she was more focused on not being spotted. Swiping the necklace off the ground, she brings it into the bathroom with her towel and comb, staring at it curiously as the stones catch the light. The lake water has washed away any trace of scent or evidence of its owner, probably long ago. It doesn't seem to be in any way rusted or tarnished. So Avery rinses it with some shampoo before putting it beside her jewelry box for inspection later. Letting the water run for a moment, she gets in and starts scrubbing her hair, thoroughly disgusted by the color of the water that comes out of it. Sonia chooses now to come to life, practically smirking. "So you need to figure out what you're gonna do about Alpha Roman." Her wolf cackles, and Avery winces a little, having momentarily forgotten about that predicament while she was finding the necklace. "I'm gonna do nothing." Avery responds adamantly, rinsing her shampoo out of her hair, and deciding it's probably best to do a second shampoo. "But you have a date with him tomorrow." Sonia smirks, and Avery rolls her eyes. "Friendly outing, not a date. Besides, I doubt he'll want to see us after that trick you pulled today." Avery scolds, cringing at the memory as she moves on to conditioner. "Oh, after what you did, he'll definitely want to see us." Sonia cackles, projecting the memory of the two getting hot and heavy against a tree into Avery's mind. "Jesus Christ." Avery mutters out loud, shaving her legs while her conditioner stays in. The biggest downside of being a werewolf had to be how fast body hair grew. She'd end up looking like Sonia if she left it too long. Part 24. The night passes quickly, and Avery is awoken by knocking on her door, rudely ripping her out of her steamy dream about a not-so-anonymous alpha. "Shit," she mutters, stumbling to the door with her eyes half closed in one of her hands, feeling along the walls for direction. The other is tugging her sleep shirt down to make sure it covers her ass. Unlocking the door, she pulls the door open, yawning widely as she does. She is greeted by the sight of what could basically be described as a god, who has a wide smirk on his face. "Morning. Wilco TT. You can close your mouth, I wouldn't want you to catch any flies." Roman teases, and Avery shoots him a half-hearted glare. "Why are you here so early?" She mumbles, rubbing her hand down her face in an attempt to wake herself up a little more. "To make sure you're ready for our day out." He smiles, and because the beach cook out starts in 40 minutes, and I thought you might like some morning. Avery stares at him in surprise, nodding after a moment of silence. "Yes, thank you. It'll probably be ready in half an hour." "How far away is the beach?" she asks, her brain not working. "It's on the other side of the house. It'll meet you back here in 35 minutes. He laughs. "Maybe sleep for those extra 5 minutes. "Great idea. See you then." She fake laughs, closing the door when Shess done. The joke is on him. She can get ready in 10 minutes. Shess going to sleep for 20. She sets her phone alarm, and then dives back into bed, shoving her head under her duvet too. Her alarm goes off in what feels like seconds, and Avery drags herself out of bed, staring at her desk. She laid out exactly what she had to put on before she went to sleep, which was a great idea in hindsight. Quickly hopping into her bikini, she puts on a sundress over it after her sunscreen dries, while the sunscreen on her face dries. She fills in her brows and adds some lip gloss, before taking her hair out of the French braid she stuffed it into the night before, examining herself in the mirror while she brushes her teeth. She deems herself acceptable, using the bathroom quickly before she hears the knocks on her door. She washes her hands vigorously, before swinging open the door, and grabbing her beach bag and phone. "Let's go, she announces, walking out of her room with her sunglasses on. Roman stares at her in amusement, paying particular attention to her mostly exposed legs. Avery can feel his eyes on her and merely smirks at the attention, continuing on her trek down the stairs with her phone in her hand as she scrolls through her messages from her friends. One makes her momentarily stop in her tracks and turn to Roman with a raised brow. "The Radcliffe pack was attacked last night," she asks curiously, looking back at her phone to read the rest of the text sent to her. "Yes, by rogues and maybe by hunters. 6 deaths and 70 casualties. They were lucky they got wind of it early enough to hide the children and non-fighters." He grimly responds, opening the main door for her. She walks out of it with a quiet thanks. Her mood changed from flirty to nervous. "That's beside where we were ambushed." She furrows her brows and Roman nods. I think there must be a rogue pack there because it's around where the coven of vampires was before they were banished. It would have been set up for living in. He sighs, and Avery nibbles her lip in thought. I'll see if I can get my brother to send some of our trackers to investigate. She murmurs, texting York as she says that out loud. He said he already had. Roman quickly interjects and leads her around the side of the house. No mention of pack business from here for today. We don't talk about it on Thursdays. He warns, and she feels the sun hit her skin as they emerge from the shaded side of the house. The sight stuns her. At least half of the pack has to be here, even at the early time of 7 a.m. The children and teenagers come for breakfast before school, and come back after school, Roman explains, seeing her shock at the bustling beach. A lot of the pack elders, including my mother, refuse to partake in these activities, as my father didn't set them up in his time. I let them do what they want because change can unsettle a lot of them, he states, shrugging. Avery nods silently, letting herself be led along the beach to an empty space, where Roman lays down a large beach towel. Sit down, he indicates, staring at her in confusion when she just looks around. She plunks herself down, getting settled in her spot, and placing her beach towel over her legs. It's a little chilly because the sun isn't fully up yet, but Jess hoping it'll get a little warmer and brighter so that she can work on her non-existent tan. Breakfast, somebody calls, and everyone gets up excitedly, walking in a pretty orderly procession towards where the men operating the fire are stood. Everybody gets a plate of food, with meat, beans, and eggs in different styles decorating the plates. Avery picks one up that has scrambled eggs, not much caring about the rest of the plate, before wandering over to where the drinks are, and collecting a glass of orange juice, waiting on Roman before they walk back to their towel. You don't have to wait on me to come back to the towel. Roman laughs as they stroll, and Avery raises a brow. I can't remember where we were sitting, so don't flatter yourself too much, she snorts, shaking her head as they reach their towel. They eat in comfortable silence, occasionally chatting as they watch the pack walk by. The kids go to school pretty soon after breakfast, and it starts to heat up. Avery produces a sun hat from her bag, and rests it on her face, laying back and relaxing. Part 25. The day passes by in the blink of an eye, and Avery is surprised by how much she enjoys herself. Roman hasn't brought up her random and awkwardly timed shift, which she's thankful for, because she doesn't know what she would say to him in the slightest. She is dragged off by the women she met the other night to have lunch with them, which turns into a long gossip session about some of the warriors, who are apparently a very kinky bunch. Avery raised a brow hearing this information and made a mental note of it while trying not to laugh, and she noticed Carolyn was struggling to keep a straight face as well, while one girl described her midnight adventure with one. The food is good, and the people are welcoming and kind, so Avery relaxed in their company, letting herself loose and laughing with them. We heard you have the hots for our alpha. A middle-aged woman Avery vaguely recognizes smirks, and they all lean closer to her again. Avery laughs nervously, and Carolyn sits back in her chair with a wide grin on her face, letting her friend endure the torture. I'm only here for 4 more days, so nothing will happen. Avery rushes out, raising her hands in the air. You didn't deny it. A young woman sings songs, making kissing noises in a very S direction. You all enjoy torturing me, don't you? Avery sighs, rolling her eyes dramatically and throwing herself back in her camp chair. The chair falls over backwards, and everyone bursts out laughing, including Avery, whose legs are over her head. Some of the men hurry over to help everyone up. Some women fell off their seats from laughing and then they shoot away with dirty looks, as the women keep chuckling. So you're actually gonna go when the week is up? Carolyn asks quietly once the laughter subsides, and some of the ladies look remarkably sad. I mean, yeah, I have duties at home, and I can't stay here. She shrugs, running a hand through her wavy hair absent. mindedly. I mean, we do need a Luna. One woman mutters to her friend, who elbows her aggressively. Avery catches these words and quickly looks over to the girl. Her brows furrowed as the woman looks like she wants the floor to open up and swallow her. You guys have a Luna. Avery responds evenly, and a ripple goes through the small crowd of women, some looking very disapproving of the topic being discussed. Supposedly, one young woman murmurs with a roll of her eyes to her friend, who gives her an eye roll back. What happened to her? Avery asks curiously, and Carol-Ann looks uneasy. Before anybody can speak, Carol-Ann stands up, brushing her hair behind her ears. We can't talk about it, she says sternly, and Avery raises an eyebrow and drops her jaw as she looks at her friend. He is us under a command not to speak about it. Carol-Ann murmurs softly, an apologetic look on her face. I have to monitor the conversation sim here. Anyone who talks about it could get thrown into the cells for a week. Avery raises her other brow in shock, shaking her head. That seems a bit extreme. She responds quietly, looking around to make sure she can't see Roman. That's our alpha for you. Carol-Ann sighs before she walks away to join her mate and child. Avery shakes her head, nodding to the remaining women, before wandering back over to where she started the day. Roman returns soon after she does, shirtless and covered in a light dusting of sand, which she notices instantly because Shess openly staring at his pecs and ABS, going into the water. He asks with a laugh, watching her observe him with humor in his eyes. I might. She shrugs quickly, pulling off her sundress and flicking her sunglasses onto the top of her head. I'll meet you there. He chuckles, shaking his head as he walks towards the water, his strides long and powerful. Avery sighs, debating just staying where she is. After a few minutes, she gets up and walks towards the water, very conscious that people are staring at her. Some of the teenagers are returning from school, so more people litter the beach as Avery forces herself to keep her movements even and purposeful. She reaches the water quickly and wades in cautiously, trying not to shriek as the cold water climbs her body and splashes her face. You look hot, Roman comments, and Avery stares at him incredulously. It's a good thing that you're here. Then, he adds, before he dunks her under the water. She pops back up like a child on a trampoline, and she tackles him backwards into the water, her hands on his chest as he slowly rises back up. Well, hell, now it's a competition. He smirks devilishly, and she squeals, before taking off in a paddle away from him, kicking as hard as she can. He grabs her leg and pulls her towards him, her shrieks echoing around the area. She can hear people laughing, no doubt at them because they're acting like children. Avery tries to shake his hand off but fails, and she ends up less than a foot away from him. He wraps his hands around her waist, and she stares at him cautiously, her eyes wide and her well aware that his pack is littered across the beach, and many eyes are probably on them. It seems he thinks the same thing, as he indicates for her to hold her breath. She does, she does, and as soon as she inhales deeply, he dives under the water and brings her with him. Avery is startled by the cold water hitting her face again, and she opens her eyes after a moment, to find him right in front of her. He winks at her, before pressing a kiss to her lips and swimming away. Swim after him. You dumb bitch. Sonia screams, her encouragement convincing Avery to hurry after him. Her legs tired of kicking but her arms suddenly feeling energized. She catches up with him, and wraps her arms around his shoulders from behind, her hands pressing against his chest and gently roving over it, as she wraps her legs around him as well as she can underwater. She kisses along his neck for a moment, before she has to go up for air, gasping when she reaches the surface. Once she catches her breath and takes a deep gulp of air, she goes back under, where Roman has beaten her too. He pulls her by her legs closer to him, and she automatically wraps her legs around him again, indulging in a deep kiss again. He runs his hands along her legs or tries to, The water makes it a bit harder and gently nips her lip, kissing along her neck and sucking. Avery suddenly remembers the love bite he left yesterday and slaps at his chest to get off, shaking her head in a scolding manner. What was he? A 14-year-old boy. He smirks against her neck and kisses her jaw, her forehead, and then her lips again, before swimming towards the surface gracefully. Why did he stop? Avery asks Sonia, a little bothered and pretty annoyed as she herself rises towards the surface, a scowl on her face. Where did Miss Innocence go from yesterday? Sonia cackles. If I were you, I'd be more worried about the 2 hickeys on your neck. You barely hid the one from yesterday, and now you have a second one to manage. Avery winces as she realizes her wolf is right, and once she gets to the beach, she snatches up her towel and wraps it around her body, from the neck down like a cape. Carolyn takes one look at her and laughs, to which Avery responds with a cheerful, "Screw you, it's not me that you want to screw." Carolyn shouts after her, and Avery shoots her a look that could kill as she walks away. Part 26. 3 weeks pass, and Avery is still in the Lancaster pack. She extended her stay, much to York's surprise and secret delight. Avery likes this pack, and she hasn't felt as terrible as usual since she arrived. She hasn't had any bad days, and Shess actually busy here. It isn't just paperwork and phone calls here, she actually has a purpose. She trains the teenagers every day, except Thursdays, when she goes to the beach, and all of them have improved, much to her shock and delight. She has something to do, and she isn't prepared to go back to sitting in an office all day. This weekend, Shess supposed to go home. There's a conference for some of the alphas, and York is supposed to be there, as well as Roman. Avery hasn't said anything yet, but her brother is operating under the assumption she'll be going home with him on Sunday evening. Tying up her hair for her training session, she bites her lip, putting on a little tinted lip balm and filling in her brows. Alpha Roman was supposed to be overseeing her session today. The last 3 weeks have been full of stolen, secret kisses in the water, or the hallways or the gym at night. She is perfectly fine with the system they have going, because, as her friend Kathleen from her pack said, if anybody knew, there would have to be an announcement made, and regulations followed. While here, she's been doing some digging into this mysterious maid of Romans. With the help of her brother and best friend, she told Carol and she was going to do it. But she didn't ask the woman to get involved, as she knew it wasn't fair for her to be in between her alpha and her friend. With a sigh, Avery bounces out of her room with her phone, wandering down to the gym where most of her students are waiting. The ones not there appear quickly, most looking excited to start their training. Avery walks to the front of the room, a smile on her face. She notices Roman slip into the room, and Avery straightens up a little. 2 months until trials, she announces, her smile widening, and you are all on track to complete them. At this statement, some of the teenagers gasp excitedly, grabbing onto their friends in delight. That doesn't mean we can slack. I'm going to be gone from tomorrow night, and you all need to keep up your practice. I've left instructions and individual plans with the Gamma, and he said at HED make sure you all stick to them. Avery continues, if you don't, you'll know because HES promised to send me videos every day of the sparring practice. If any of you fall behind, you'll be able to see it. Some of the students sag a little, and then all of their eyes quickly flash black, before they straighten a little from where they're sitting slumped. Deputy Alpha Wilco TT, we all chipped in on a little something to say thank you. A girl who she can now name as Esm begins quietly, walking up with 3 others, 2 boys and 1 girl, all holding bags behind their backs and smiles on their faces. You didn't have to train us, but you did, and now we won't look ridiculous at trials. Michael, one of the boys nods. Thank you for giving us your time. Henry, the almost drowning victim, adds, and thank you for believing in us. The final voice adds. One of the shy girls smiles. Avery clenches her jaw to try to stop herself crying. her eyes tearing up as the four get closer to her. She gives them a weak smile, shaking her head at them. "You really shouldn't have." She chuckles shakily, surprising the four by pulling them into a hug. She puts the bags into the corner of the room to look through later, as she continues trying not to cry. She didn't expect anything from these kids, and she was blown away by their thanks. Avery notices Roman, who is still in the corner, looking shocked by the display of generosity by his pack's teenagers. "Get into pairs with somebody you haven't fought with yet," Roman announces, taking the attention from an emotional Avery, who is blinking fiercely. The kids shuffle into place, making twos and facing off. Beginning to spar once Avery blows the whistle. "Thank you," she whispers, as Roman joins her on the sidelines as they watch the kids fighting. "No problem. You can't show them weakness. They're like hyenas, they'll attack and kill you." He responds with a wink and a joking tone, shaking his head at her. "You didn't put them up to it, did you?" she asks suspiciously, staring up at him with her brows furrowed and arms folded. "No, I didn't even think of getting them to give you something," he responds truthfully, shrugging at her. "Oh, okay, Avery murmurs, watching the pair fighting closest to her and walking over to straighten one of them up into the correct stance. "Good work, guys," she nods, going along the lines and fixing postures and punches as she goes. Roman watches her in silent awe, his eyes following her figure as she weaves in and out of the teenagers fighting. A punch almost lands on her once or twice, but she dodges them both times, her calm expression never changing other than when it shifts into a happy smile when she spots. He can't hear what she's saying over the hustle and bustle, but he continues to watch her, so focused that he doesn't realize when a knife is lobbed at him by one of the pair sparring with weapons. The blade embeds itself into his forearm, and he stares at it in amusement for a moment, until Avery gasps and hurries towards him. "Get the pack, doctor," Avery calls, and he stares at her in confusion. It's a silver blade. She cringes, avoiding his eyes as she helps him to the ground, taking the majority of his weight as he stays silently staring at her, his eyes darting everywhere but focusing on her face. The doctor arrives quickly and shuffles Avery away from Roman. She swallows down her upset at wanting to stay by his side, clenching her jaw. "You let them practice with silver," the doctor shouts over to her, and she nods at him yes. They'd be doing it in battle, and they need to learn a tolerance for scratches. Nobody has ever been injured. Avery responds sharply, not liking his angry tone. "This isn't battle," the doctor retorts, quickly ripping the knife out of Roman's arm and pouring a purple liquid all over it. "Jesus wept." Roman gasps, the liquid seeping into the wound and his body contorting upwards in pain. Avery stays quiet, biting her lip before she remembers the teenagers. "Go outside, guys." "Okay." "Or do some stretching. It'll be out soon, and I promise I'll let you know it's happening." "Okay," Avery swears, and the kids shuffle out, all of them looking white in the face. When the door closes after the last child, Avery hurries over to Roman, whose muscles are contracting so much that it looks like his tat. She grabs his not clenched hand and holds it in her too, kneeling beside him as he grits his teeth. "Of course. I got silver at right before the conference." He chuckles weakly. "You'll have to protect me," she mutters, shaking her head at him and rubbing his hand gently, watching the doctor continue to clean out his arm. She spots what looks like bone and gags a little. This experience much different than seeing her own when she hurts somebody in battle. She cares about this person and the bone he owns. "Woman up," Sonia hisses, although she isn't the happiest with the situation either. "I'm going to knock him out for a few hours. I know he needs to be at that meeting, so he'll just have to sleep on the way there." The doctor sighs, shaking his head. "Yeah, that's okay." Avery nods frantically. "I have to go with him anyway, so I can make sure he gets there safely. No silver, and no garlic," the doctor instructs sternly, and Avery almost rolls her eyes. "Yes, that's perfect. Could you mind link somebody to get them to carry Roman to his room?" she asks the doctor, and Roman makes a grunting noise. "I can walk," he mutters, beginning to get up and then falling back onto his behind. "Oh," he grumbles. "I didn't think it hit my bone." "Well, it did. So sit there until I can find somebody to carry you upstairs." Avery responds, rolling her eyes at him. "Am I patient? You control your eyes at me." He whines, and the doctor looks wholly uncomfortable with the situation in front of him.